What is up, everybody? How's it going? Austin Prechtelevate Performance, coming at you live. Hope you're having a good day so far. Hope you're having a good day so far. Happy Wednesday, by the way. As you Wednesday, and yeah, if you watch later time, hashtag replay, so I know that you saw it. But today, we're going to be talking about something that a lot of people probably have have thought about before, and maybe thinking about it right now, or have already made a decision on. And yeah, I want to talk about today, when you should actually drop your calories, like kind of like the process that you should go through to figure out if it's a good idea or not, or if there's something else going on. Because, for those of you that don't know, weight loss occurs from being in a caloric deficit, right? So, like where you're at right now, you can eat a certain number of food. Just to give a little bit of background, you can eat a certain number of calories or a certain number of food, right? And you won't gain and you won't lose weight. That's your maintenance calories, right? If you go above that, you're in a surplus. You're going to gain weight. If you go below that, you're in a deficit and you're going to lose weight, right? So when should you drop your calories again, right? And so my thought process behind this, and like for a lot of people, this is kind of like the way you want to go about it, the most sustainable way, right? So because if it's sustainable, you can maintain it long term, and you're not going to stress your body out. You're not going to stress your mind out, and you're going to have a better time and an easier time when it comes to your weight loss journey, or weight gain journey, or maintenance, right? If you're going for body recomp, which you can do body recomp while you're losing weight too. But if you're just trying to maintain your progress where you're at right now, that's what the first thing I want to emphasize is that it is goal dependent, right? It is goal dependent. Are you trying to gain weight? Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to maintain, right? Those things need to be taken into consideration, because if you're trying to gain weight, you don't want to drop your calories. If you're trying to maintain, you probably don't want to drop your calories. You probably want to try and build them up a little bit, actually. But if you're trying to lose weight, yeah, there will come a point in time where you have to lower your caloric intake, right? And so, how I like to go about it is first thing, right? Have you stopped seeing progress? Like, have you truly stopped seeing progress? And how long have you stopped seeing progress, right? Because at the end of the day, right, I really like to try and focus on non-scale victories, but the scale and the weight going down, if your goal is weight loss, is one factor among many, right? And I'll even argue it's not the most important one, but it is a factor that, over time, it's a trend that shows progress is occurring. And so when it comes to your weight loss goals, the first thing you want to think about is, how long have I not been seeing progress for? Right? How long have I not been seeing progress for? Has it only been a couple of days, right? Or has it only been like a week, right? And I didn't see progress this week. Has it been multiple weeks, or even maybe a month or two, right? What's up? How's it going? How's it going? Appreciate the like, appreciate the comments. Yeah, and so, is that what's going on? Is that what's going on? Because it could be that, right? It could be short term or a longer term, extended period of time not seeing progress. If it's in the short term, right? If it's in the short term, and just to emphasize, sustainable weight loss and what you typically want to see, and it can vary, right? If a lot of times it's proportionally kind of it's kind of proportionate. So if you're at a much higher body weight right now, you can technically lose more, and it's still okay, and it's still within what I would consider sustainable. But for most people, anywhere from half a pound to 2 pounds lost per week. 2 pound really kind of pushing it, but more like half pound, pound and a half. That's what you should be seeing each week. In theory, right? If you are following a plan where you're in a caloric deficit for weight loss, right? And if you are not seeing that happen, right, over the course of several weeks, something needs to change, right? You either need to, create more of a caloric deficit through doing more cardio, or through eating less food and dropping your calories, right? And so, um, you know, first thing you ask yourself, how long has this been going on, right? Has it only been a week? Has it been 2 weeks? Has it been 4 weeks? A couple months that I've been eating the same thing and I'm not getting any results? And so that whole like definition of insanity, doing the same shit over and over again and expecting a different result, is at play here. So you need to be careful. You need to pay attention to these things, and you need to track these things, so that way you have reference points to like look back on and be like, oh, like I weigh the same as I did like 2 months ago, and my calories have been the same, and I've thought I was in a deficit, but progress isn't happening, right? Obviously, you're no longer in a deficit. But the reason why I say like the timeline for it is really important is because you need to be paying attention to these things, because If it's only been a week, and I'm going to emphasize if it's only been a week or two, that's short term. If you haven't seen progress for 4, 6, 8 weeks at the same caloric intake and you've accounted for everything, right? Accounted for everything. You're doing everything right. You're not any more sedentary than you usually are, right? You're getting your steps in. You're, tracking your food properly. You're, not like, super inflamed, or for the women out there, you're not on your time of the month, right? Like that's not happening. So, because those things can impact, and those things are like day to day, like, or week to week kind of like fluctuations that can occur. And when you think you're not making progress, but you actually are, a lot of times it can, mess with people, and they can, jump the gun and end up lowering their calories way sooner than they should have. And so, the goal, right, for sustainable weight loss for the majority of us, and I want you to start thinking about this, is, sometimes, like being, sometimes, less it's kind of one of those like less is more kind of like concepts, where like, more people are like, oh, more is better. Like if I, yeah, I'm supposed to be in like a 3 to 500 caloric deficit, but what if I was in a 1200 calorie deficit? That's going to make me get progress quicker, right? Like, and so a lot of times people think like, I can just drop my calories like crazy and I'm just going to lose a lot of weight really fast. But that oftentimes is not the case. And it can actually cause you to have less progress in the long run, because one, you're going to be freaking miserable. You're going to be starving. Your body and your metabolism you're going to go through metabolic adaptation likely a lot quicker than you otherwise would have. And you just like shrink your wiggle room for weight loss that could occur. And then you have to do a reverse diet or be miserable for a long period of time. And it increases your chances of quitting, right? Because it's mentally tough to be at that low of a caloric intake for that long. And so you need to ask yourself, like, for sustainability's sake, what can you do to optimize your weight loss goals, right? And for most people, that's being in a low, like a smaller caloric deficit for a longer period of time. So, once so let's say your caloric intake, your maintenance calories is like 2,500, right? You should be consuming 2,200 calories for as long as you can until you stop losing weight at that sustainable range of like half a pound to 2 pounds lost per week, right? Once that stops, once you stop losing that half a pound, right, per week, and it's been for a couple of weeks, and you haven't seen any extra progress, that's when it's time to drop it, right? You want to lose weight sustainably over the course of a longer period of time, because that's more maintainable, that's sustainable, that's also going to like not encourage like a dramatic metabolic adaptation to a low caloric intake. So that's what you want to focus. We'd like to lie to ourselves sometimes. Are you tracking your food properly, right? Are you eating the calories that you say you're eating? Are you being as active and doing your workouts and not being super sedentary, right? These things all play a role in whether or not you're actually truly in a caloric deficit or not, right? And so you know when you should actually do it, and whether or not you should or not, depends on where you're at right now, right? Where's you got to think about these other factors, like where's your mental, like where's your mindset at right now? Are you like feeling like you're starving and like dreaming about food and things like that because you're in such a strict caloric deficit? Probably not a good idea to drop your calories again, right? Probably not a good idea to drop your calories again. How low are your calories right now, right? Are you consuming 1,200 to 1,500 calories a day right now, and you're not even close to your weight loss goal? Well, you probably need to reverse diet at that point, right? Because you shouldn't go any lower, because you're going to be again miserable and probably potentially malnourished, and be and have potential nutrient deficiencies and things like that you need to be careful of, right? And you may lose a lot more. You might have a lot more muscle atrophy because of it too, because you're stressing the shit out of your body. You're stressing your body out, and so these are things that you need to think about. And so when should you actually lower them, right? Or when should you like do a reverse diet? So when should you lower them? I say, and a good general rule of thumb is if you haven't been sick or been super inflamed or whatever it may be, or had any like crazy water weight fluctuations due to like a menstrual cycle, or having like a super salty meal or whatever it may be, I always say give it another week, right? I always say give it another week, or maybe even 2 weeks, depending on how quickly your body has responded in the past. Because some people losing half a pound every 2 weeks is like where they're at. Some people losing 4 pounds every 2 weeks is where they're at typically. And just know that the further you get into your weight loss journey, and the more weight that you lose, and the lower you get, like in terms of your weight overall, like it's going to come off slower over time. Like you're going to, your progress is going to slow down over time. And then that may be when you want to try and reintroduce kind of like a reverse diet and build your calorie pool up and then lower them again slowly over time. But, when it comes down to, you know, doing this sustainably, don't time and time again, I see it and people like overly restrict themselves way sooner than they need to, because they're like, shit, I didn't see progress this week. I need to drop my calories immediately. That's what I need to do. No, you need to give it another week and make sure that all those other factors that I talked about with water weight fluctuations and food and things like that, that could be at play actually, aren't actually the thing that may be going on. And so I know it's not fun to not see progress after you've been working your butt off for a week or maybe even 2 weeks, but give it time and wait and see if progress is going to occur. And then if it doesn't, after 2 to 4 weeks, right, of being at the caloric intake, well, then you've got a pretty damn good idea of like, well, shit, like I should probably lower my calories because I'm definitely not seeing progress at this current caloric intake, right? And so either drop your calories or increase cardio, whatever you want to do or whatever works best for you, for your situation, within reason. But that's how you should be going about it. So I hope that this was informative. I hope that this was helpful. Feel free to give the video a like if you got value from this. I hope that this makes sense. And if you have any other questions, feel free to comment them on the live or on one of my posts, or if you're on TikTok in my Q&A little thing. Feel free to ask me any questions that you have about reverse dieting, caloric, deficits, like dropping them when you should, when you shouldn't. Because at the end of the day, for most people, right, we want it now, we want it quick, we want that instant gratification for our hard work, but give it time. Patience is a virtue. But if something ain't happening, if you're not seeing progress after 2 to 4 weeks at the current caloric intake, shit needs to change, right? Stop doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, because you're not going to get a different result, likely, based on the history of things. So hope that this was helpful. Hope that this was valuable. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. And yeah, have a good rest of your day, guys. And I hope that this was informative, a little bit more in-depth live than usual. So I hope it was easily digestible. And if it wasn't, send me some questions and I'll be happy to answer them. So have a good day, everybody, and I'll talk to you later.